Hello everyone and welcome to another Directions Magazine webinar sponsored by Google. Today's webinar focus is combining Google Search with Google Maps for decision making. My name is Barbara Duke. I'm the Executive Webinar Producer here at Directions Magazine and your moderator for today's webinar. I'm assisted by my colleague Lynette Qualia. And if you have any problems with the GoToWebinar platform, one of us should be able to assist you via the questions box of your control panel. So a quick introduction to the many spatial things happening here at Directions. We are the world's leading source of news and opinion for all things location. We endeavor to give you the inside edge by reading our publications and attending our events. Newsletters, blogs, podcasts, industry channels, and of course the webinars will keep you posted on the latest geospatial trends and solutions. Get that all at directionsmag.com. We're excited to have almost 1,200 folks from around the world registered for today's webinar. So welcome everybody. We also encourage all those folks to be asking good questions, general or specific. In your control panel there's a section called questions. Click on that plus, type in the question, and we will do our best to respond to as many as possible at the end of the webinar. Any questions that we don't get to during the allotted time, just know that we'll be following up via email with you, so don't hesitate to submit them all. We also are taking a poll during the webinar, and we appreciate you sharing your response with our sponsor. It just helps us get to know you a little better and understand your interests. And finally, number one question is, are you recording? Indeed, we are. So that will be available to you in the coming day or so, we hope. And so keep an eye on your email, and we'll be in touch with that. So now let's meet the Google and Thermopylae team. Today we have the honor of first hearing from Elliot Danner. He is the one of the search architects at Google and a very talented fella. He is going to be followed today by John Clark, Chief Innovation Officer at Thermopylae Sciences. They're going to share their expertise and a great demonstration for you. They're excited to share the tools that they've created to empower your decision making. Gentlemen, welcome. We're thrilled to have you today and excited to see the cool tools that you brought with you.
Thanks very much, Robert. This is Elliot Danner from Google. We're going to talk today about empowering decision making by combining our search technologies with our geotechnologies using a solution developed by our partner, Thermopylae Sciences and Technologies. I'd like to start, though, by discussing Google.com. First of all, if you haven't used Google.com and you're on this webinar, try it. It's cool. Google.com delivers on Google's mission of organizing the world's information and making it universally accessible and useful. If you think of the way Google.com works in your daily life, it really has probably transformed the way you look at information and the way you answer the questions that you have every day. If you think of what we're doing on Google.com, when you come to the Google.com homepage and ask a question, be it a broad, non-specific, misspelled, confusingly worded, poorly phrased query, we hand back to you a targeted, useful, actionable, and accurate answer. And we do that almost every time. If you think of what you use Google.com for, you use it to ask the questions that come up every day, right? And we provide you with answers from across the web to those questions. We do the same inside enterprise using a product we sell called the Google Search Appliance. The Google Search Appliance is an implementation of our relevancy algorithms that can be installed completely behind your firewall with no connection to Google's broader cloud infrastructure, crawl and index your enterprise content, and provide you with the ability to get relevant, targeted answers to you and your users' questions from across the data in your enterprise. It scales simply, it's easy to install, it works with a wide variety of enterprise data sources, and really delivers on the Google.com promise outside the firewall against your data inside the firewall. We also provide Google Maps. And if we think of what Google Maps does, Google Maps helps answer another set of questions. So where Google Search answers your textual questions, Google Maps answers your spatial questions. And you encounter spatial questions every day. I just want everyone to think for a second about the number of queries you have just in your mind, not queries you type into Google.com, but just queries in your mind every day that are spatial in nature. Where's the nearest 7-Eleven? Earlier today I had to ask where the nearest gas station was that had diesel. These are all complex geo-related questions that you have every day. And we provide we provide Maps, rather, as a viewing layer for that information. Maps has transformed the way we live our lives, just like Google.com has. If you think of what Maps is really doing for you, it's giving you information. It's giving you information close to you in a way that you can relate to in a very physical sense, right? What's the value of a map? The value of a map is giving you a picture of information. The problem is that behind the firewall, huge amounts of data aren't geocoded and are therefore not available in a geovisualization platform. The challenge, of course, is that geocoding is traditionally expensive and complex, but also many systems that exist behind the firewall. If we think of enterprise resource planning systems, we think of human resources systems, case management systems, just standard unstructured documents that your organization may have. All of these likely contain spatial elements. Just think about what your organization does on a day-to-day basis. How many times does a memo contain a location in it, an address, a building name, a point of interest? How many times do you enter a case in a case management system or an incident management system or an equipment maintenance database that has a location, a site number, an address, a point related to it? But that information is not visible to you on a map because when those systems were designed, there wasn't an easy mechanism to provide a geospatial interface or a geospatial visualization layer to that valuable geo-content that you have. But what if we could do that? Today, we're going to look at a solution that enables you to use the power of Google Search and the ease of use of Google Maps in order to visualize the answers from across your enterprise's data on a map. And with that, I'd like to ask a quick question of the audience, just to make sure that we sort of know our audience a little better, understand the things that might be important to you. Barbara?
Yeah, so our question is, what type of government agencies do you work for or with? Health and Human Services, Justice and Public Safety, Science and Environment, Transportation, or perhaps Education? And we know we might not have covered every single instance, so if you're feeling strongly about it, maybe another type of government agency, you can throw that into the question chat area. Fantastic. So we're getting some good responses there as well. Thanks, guys. Wonderful.
Thanks, Barbara.
Yeah.
I'd now like to introduce today's presenter from Thermopylae Sciences and Technologies. Thermopylae Sciences and Technology is a Google Enterprise Premier Partner with a focus on geospatial software development and mobile offerings. They've worked closely with us to deliver solutions in the intelligence community, the Army, Department of Homeland Security, and across the commercial space. In addition, Thermopylae Sciences and Technology has been awarded Google's Innovation Partner of the Year for Maps in 2013, our Deployment Partner of the Year for Maps in 2013, and they were our Global Partner of the Year for Maps in 2013. Thermopylae brings a deep understanding of our Google's science, search and maps technology. And I'd like to introduce John Clark, Chief Innovation Officer.
Thank you so much, Elliot, for that very kind introduction. I'm very excited to be here today with all of you, really kind of discussing about how we kind of take our document data and our business information systems data and unify that in space, and also how our traditional types of GIS data and content can really help inform and connect us to those documents types. One of the things that I wanted to preference is that we want to actually take this through a real-world scenario. And we understand that the poll, many of you may have varying different perspectives from either government agencies or commercial agencies that are on the webinar today that have regulatory or public information sharing requirements government. We wanted to take the technology and personalize it and take a scenario. And so we wanted to try and use something that would touch as many areas as possible and speak to everyone. And so we selected a potential scenario where water contamination occurs at an individual county level where an emergency response coordinator's job starts with water contamination alerting, and we'll talk about how search and geo can help with that, how this helps them discover response tools, share information, visualize other infrastructure that's related to this, and also document content, identify health risks or current health trends, and then to figure out where they can actually begin to transition resources, assets, etc., for solving the problem. Where would public water dispensaries be? How do we get them there? How do we let the public know? And then finally go back to close the loop with how do we now transition this to the right type of resolution team who's going to come in and make this all work. So we wanted to put it in an actionable way that we could cover and tell a story. It's one thing to show technology and talk about technology. It's another way to show it actually being applied in a scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to iSpatial, which is the partner solution that Elliot from Google mentioned that Thermopylae has built. Just a quick overview before I dive in the scenario so you know what you're looking at. The Google Maps technology, which we all know and probably extensively use, at least in our personal lives for directions, for finding locations, is a fantastic platform for also unlocking your enterprise and organizational data for visualization. Now, Elliot talked about behind the firewall, in front of the firewall. In this example, all the data that we're going to cover today, as well as a lot of the document contents, would be represented as being behind the enterprise firewall. So this solution, this web-based application called iSpatial, would, for many of our government customers, to be deployed on-premise on their accredited networks, and has been employed in both federal civilian and DoD agencies up to the highest classification level. Google, in this case, is only bringing in the tiles over which this application displays your data in your content. And while we all know Google Maps and the way that Google Maps looks, what we haven't seen, probably not many of us haven't seen, is rich web-based applications which we can connect to Google Maps and your data to achieve specific capabilities or requirements or business outcomes for those private sector businesses that are on the line with us today. So that's what this is. This is a web-based tool tied to your data or representative data on the enterprise, simply using Google as that visualization foundation, with Google search appliances inside your enterprise also indexing and discovering your content, your business information, and tying that into one. So let's go ahead and get started with our scenario. We mentioned that we're an emergency coordinator. So let's go ahead and look over Pawnee County, and this is the fictional county in Kansas that we've created for the purposes of this demonstration. And as an emergency coordinator, I have set up, through this tool, we have the ability to set up alerts and notifications based on criteria. And I, as an emergency coordinator, have said, I want to be notified anytime I have any type of environmental report where a certain threshold are exceeded. In this case, contamination is at a high level. And so I have set these rules up, and now you notice I just had an alert appear in my session. These alerts could be notifying just my user or multiple users or groups of users on the system. And it says that we've had contamination occur and that it's high and it's inside the boundary of our county. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Fly To tool, and I'm going to pull out a little bit here so I can kind of see right where this is. It's kind of south of a little bit of a town center. And now I'm going to interact with this data a little bit. I want to be able to start discovering what is related to this content. So I'm going to go ahead and interact from the map, and I'm going to click the data, and I'm going to notice, okay, I've got a basic information. We've got a report of contamination high. The petroleum hydrocarbons are exceeding the safe levels and creating a potentially dangerous situation. Now, what's interesting is being able to integrate with field-based reporting, other forms of data your organizations already have. This system is designed to very easily allow all the record attributes to be visible and pulled into the system, so I can go in here and do some basic quick looking around at the actual content. And I even noticed that I've got related content for these types of reports in my system. These can be either uploaded files or linked files files to other records, and I notice that I've got a water contamination protocol from the Environmental Protection Agency, which I've associated with any type of these events. So I can quickly drill down into document content that I manually relate. Later we'll talk about how search helped us discover documents we didn't know were related. And this is just an example of how, via the web-based interface, I can choose to relate content to geospatial data, data that's coming in from the field, etc. Now you notice we also have a link of a report an emergency, which we'll come back to at the very end of our demonstration to kind of close the thread. So I've been able now to determine, okay, I've got a contamination alert, it's inside my county, and I've been able to find some basic other information. So now I want to start trying to answer the question of why. Why might I have this contamination? So those of you familiar with GIS technologies know that doing things like geospatial searches and drawing bounding boxes can be really helpful in discovering new data. Our tools support a lot of these basic geo-functions, but they're really designed not for high-end GIS people, but for really everyone to find, discover, and interact with data, both document-wise and map-wise in one place. And so what we're going to do is what we call a geo-search, and we're going to search our county, this blue boundary box, and we're just going to search across all of our data for recent reports of contamination. Right? We want to understand kind of what we've had recently. Now we could have searched by time window or other attributes as well, but I just left this kind of broad. And what we notice is that we've got 3 reports. Now one of the important things to note is that I'm meaning to share this information with someone else, so we have the ability to export this data very easily to things like Shape, KML, CSV, etc. because maybe I want to send this out to someone else to help collaborate with this on this with me, and I can export this data. But in this case, too, I want to be able to actually now move into our search integration with the Google Search Appliance and show how we can now search on these geospatial features in their reports against document data. So now what I want to do is go ahead and do an attribute search on this, and I'm going to expand this window so you can actually see this a little better. And what we want to do is we want to use, across these multiple reports, the type of the report and the status. And what we suddenly begin seeing instantly here, and I'll hide this search form area up here so you can see the document results, is instant search results coming back from our Google Search Appliance that took the geospatial status of the report and the type of the report and looked across all of our document library and things that we've indexed for related content to these exact types of contamination. So I'm actually finding related content in my enterprise to these types of contamination. So I've got Kansas Local Government Water Quality Planning, I've got the Water Security Handbook, and this is because the Google Search Appliance indexes all this content. So where we said where status is petroleum hydrocarbon contamination and status is high, find me documents that contain those types of words. Later we'll come back and talk about finding where asset IDs are contained in documents, and we know where that asset is and we're able to correlate. So you see I'm able to quickly drill into content here, and I can jump into one of the great features of the Google Search Appliance, this built-in document previewer. So even if I don't have PDF installed or Word or whatever, I can interact with the content very simply. So now we've been able to, open the Water Handbook. We've been able to kind of look at some information as an emergency coordinator about this type of alert. And one of the things that the Water Security Handbook has talked to me about, we'll jump ahead briefly in time so you don't get to see the user kind of just sit here and read, is the fact that oftentimes these type of contaminations due to infrastructure that might be damage in the area, that these types of contaminations don't just naturally occur. So one of the things we'll go ahead and do now is we want to actually use our county again to search for types of asset and infrastructure that might be causing this issue. And so what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and do a geo search inside our county. And now we're going to search for pipelines. So I would like to look at pipelines inside my county, and this would be based on GIS content that our public sector utility and our private sector energy organizations might be sharing with their company to help us understand what's going through our county. And here I have several pipelines that traverse my county, and I see though that I've got an Great Plains County pipeline here that comes through here. And I see some, kind of interesting things going on here. So one of the things now I'm going to do is I want to now find all document content reports that are, the pipeline owner may have provided us that relate to this physical asset ID. So I'm going to now go ahead and do an attribute search. Again, this searches the Google Search Appliance. And I'm going to use the asset ID of this feature as my search criteria. And what it will do is hand this asset ID to the Google Search Appliance and bring back all data I have, all document data I have, as well as business records from other business information systems related to this asset ID. So now I notice a couple different things. I've got an inspection report, and I've got a Maxima record. So I'm able to kind of look into, and this is one of the cool things about the Google Search Appliance, I can actually jump into business records from other applications and other business systems, or I can interact with documents. So I want to stress to everyone here that it's not just about finding text documents and Word documents and PDFs. The Google Search Appliance, through adapters, can actually connect to a number of common business information systems and actually search and discover those business records too, to include things like Remedy, Maximo, etc. We have an inspection report here. I could download that, I could look at that, or I can just kind of look at it here. And I noticed that very recently this asset had an inspection, and it was not indicated to be any issue, and it passed. So I know that the asset's been well maintained by our energy provider that has the asset in our county, and everything looks good there. So I'm going to now continue to go ahead and say, well, if we don't have an issue with the maintenance on the piece of infrastructure, but it was very near that contamination report, let's go ahead and pull up some of those contamination reports again inside our area. So we can see that this pipeline is very, very close to where we've had these high concentration of contamination. So something is still going on here. So now let's do a geosearch, and another geosearch to enable us to look for other data, whether it be GIS data, report data, inside our county. And now we're going to look for construction. I live in this county, and I know that we've been doing some construction recently in the area. Maybe this asset was damaged through that. So now we do a construction search, and we notice we've got a couple different construction locations, and I can even do multiple searches on this. So if I want to go and search again for pipelines, so I can see the pipelines in relationship to the construction, I notice something kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and, just for grins, turn on those water tests again, just so I'm starting to composite up my data here and kind of see everything in one place. And what do I notice as I'm beginning to look at my data? I've got both my construction project, my pipeline, and my contamination all very kind of close together. So now I'm starting to notice some interesting facts about what's going on here. So now let's switch into Street View mode. One of the things that's really cool with this type of technology is that all the visualization Google Maps and Google's Geo tools have to offer have been unified here to help me understand what's going on. So now we'll go ahead and minimize this window. I'm looking at the same data. Here I see part of my pipeline infrastructure actually in Street View, which is representative of what I saw on my map. And also I'm seeing this construction cone, and here right on the road, and this isn't always going to be the case, but you're going to actually notice that there's actually a pretty large piece of damage to this road that I can actually see in Street View. So it makes sense, if I can actually go back to where the construction was, that we've had some construction and maintenance occurring in this area to perhaps do some repair of the damage we see kind of here in this left side of my screen. So I've got construction going on right here to fix an issue I can see, but also contamination very, very closely. So I'm now beginning to draw a little bit of a picture here. We had recent construction, and I can click on this data and look and see that we had road maintenance going on at this site, etc. I've got contamination, and I've got a piece of infrastructure right there. So now what I want to do is start understanding impact. I'm pretty sure I know why this is happening. Now I want to understand what's the impact of what's happening. So let's go ahead now, and I'm going to go ahead and return to my Pawnee County here. And we're going to go ahead and do another search for poisoning. I want to know what our medical providers have reported that might start showing me the impact my county is having on my county. So, due to some HIPAA regulations and whatnot, our providers can only report by, zip code or street, etc. But I now get back a heat map of poisoning occurrences kind of in the area, and I can kind of see that they're concentrated in that same area where we had our construction and our high contamination, right? So I'm easily able to go back and kind of return to my data sets and say, we're having a lot of this kind of contamination, inside this area. Now I could also do a search inside these tools, inside these contaminated reports, and look for additional information on, okay, what's the diagnosis for, these reports of poisoning that have been reported. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and use this broad heat map, and let's do an attribute search now. Again, going back to the Google search appliance to search across these medical documents and reports that are provided, not patient-specific, but standard reporting that medical providers would do. And let's search by diagnosis. So we're going to go ahead and search now by diagnosis on some of this data. Whoops, let's actually do a proper attribute search here. And then what we really want to do now is discover the document data that relates to these heat maps. So as soon as I can click the right heat map here, we'll actually go ahead and do an attribute search on diagnosis. So you see that we have a diagnosis in one of these reports, and now we're starting to see Pawnee County Hospital records that relate to this. I'm going to maximize this panel so we can just focus on this data. And we've got a couple reports, and we can dive in here, and we can start drilling into document content that relates to geospatial content to actually show kind of what was going on. And what I'm seeing in some of these reports is I've got a couple, incidences very close of hydrocarbon poisoning that I'm seeing my local healthcare providers provide, and I'm able to correlate that back in time and space to this incident that I've got going on. So finally, to kind of wrap this up, we've got a tool that has enabled us to take our traditional GIS data, our field reports, our infrastructure, document content that relates to this event. We've used it to discover documents. We've used it to discover geospatial data. We've used it to discover asset and infrastructure data. And now as an emergency coordinator, I think I've got an incident that's related to construction breakage of a pipeline. It's having an impact on my community. I would now be able to say, okay, I need to get new water to this affected area. So the last thing that I'm going to be able to do here is I'm going to do one of these cool features that we have inside this application called search within a layer, meaning we've got a number of distribution centers, hospitals, schools, stadium, churches that register with the county their status as a staging area for food, for water, for evacuation, for shelter in the event of an emergency. And here we can actually search within these, saying I want to search within all these sublayers here, and I want to only search on this content where their status is available, meaning that the current most recent reported status that the distribution center has reported is available. So there's no point finding locations that aren't available right now. Maybe they have an event, etc. So now what I do is I find and return, finally, both hospitals, schools, churches, places of worship, things of that nature, that are available to act as distribution centers for new potable water near and around the area that's impacted. You notice I've got places of worship as green, I've got medical providers as red, I've got schools as orange, and it looks like to me that both these medical centers and perhaps this place of worship would probably be the ideal staging area for potable water in and around the area that we've had impacted. So with that, we'll kind of say, all right, I now know everything I need to know. I've done that in the span of here 10 minutes or so, and really been able to make informed decisions, gather information, and I'm going to go back to where we started, and I'm going to talk about the ability to link content, and now I'm ready to begin going to the report an emergency, where I'm going to go ahead and put all this detailed information, and I'm going to now share this and get both the pipeline owner involved about the damage to their pipeline. I'm going to go ahead and get other county resources involved to begin staging water, and I've been able to do all of that by unifying both my GIS data with my document data, and then giving that tool in a very simple, easy-to-use way that's just in a web browser. Any person with the right credentials, sitting inside the county center could use. I've given that simply and deployed that simply as a way to do it. So with that, let's go back to our slides. What we really wanted to cover here today was the benefits of combining search and mapping. And what were we able to show? Unlocking the geodata in your content. We don't think a lot about an asset ID in a document for a pipeline as a geocode, because it's not. However, many times our GIS systems do have the latitude and longitude of that asset in time and space. And we were able to correlate the asset ID on the map to then find and discover documents, maintenance inspection reports, business system data from Maximo about that piece of pipe, and see that, that pipeline was in good shape from its, pipeline integrity inspection was recent and was positive. But we wouldn't have been able to make that correlation so simply had we not been able to use the geodata to search the document data and to link those in a way. We're also able to visualize results in a way users understand, because we were able to see our construction near our pipeline, near our contamination report, near our higher incidence of poisoning being reported by our medical providers in and around that area. We were able to put the story together quickly and simply, which really means bringing meaningful actual results to the end user in a very simple, easy to understand way. And I think that's one of the powers of marrying Google technologies together for the enterprise, is that you can do these things very quickly, very simply, over tools we already know and understand. Most of us, who use high-end GIS tools, which are fantastic for creating very high-end content, don't use those same tools to go and get directions on for, a trip to the movie or a special restaurant with our significant other or family. We use the tools we know and understand, and that's the concept we've taken. While we've ingested content from a number of high-end GIS systems and a number of high-end business systems directly into this tool, I have a common way to do it. I have a common way to make sense of all this data, and that's really our focus here. So how did this all come together? Where did we start? In the center was iSpatial, which is the Thermopylae GeoSearch solution. This is a packaged, productized capability. What you saw was not a demo that's been built for the purpose of this webinar. It's part of our products, which we sell both to GSA by the GSA schedule to government customers, is available for private sector organizations, and is deployed in literally hundreds of places around the world today. We also work with the Google Search Appliance. It is the piece of technology that searched those index document stores that the county had been provided on the pipeline integrity inspection for the asset, for the EPA handbook, for the medical records submitted, etc., and that we just simply talk to via its search API to bring that data and that search into the mapping interface for the user to understand. We use Google Maps as the base of our canvas to display that information over. The iSpatial product both supports Google Maps in 2D as well as 3D. Sometimes being able to visualize the assets in 3 dimensions in that browser is just as powerful. But all of that's part of the Google Maps technology. Moving up into the top right, one of the things we didn't cover in this demo, because we wanted to focus on our government customers' use cases, is that any organization that uses Google Apps for Business, or our government customers use Google Apps for Government, this capability can also integrate directly with Google Drive Search. So if your data and your documents are already on Google Docs or Google Drive in the cloud and Google Secure Infrastructure, you can actually use the same power the Search Appliance provides on-premise on your data that's already hosted on Google. That integration is already complete. I mentioned iSpatial. Finally, we integrated with a numerous amount of different data sources that enabled us to talk to things like Maximo, EPA content, healthcare provider content, and that's really the power here. GIS data from perhaps our county GIS system, all unified into one place. all pulled together in a meaningful way for users to understand. So I appreciate everyone giving me some time to run through that. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic back over for the next part of our session.
Great. Thanks so much, John. Super information. So we'll leave up the contact information there for everyone while we talk through some questions here. Folks, continue to type those in. Lots of great questions coming in. So John, first, can the search function be configured to include external real-time sources such as weather warnings and that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll take that as well and get Elliot's input, but we have worked to connect both search and GIS data with multiple different feeds of information. So we talk about documents as being really prevalent as what users want to find discover, but you're absolutely correct. You know, a weather report that relates to a location or even historical weather report data is also, you know, textual content in many ways. Being able to link that as well as the spatial is absolutely something, as well as other things other than weather. You know, incoming, some of our commercial customers, work orders, incoming sales orders, our government space, perhaps requests for inspections, all of anything that's textual and is either in a file or a feed of data can be indexed. Elliot, did you have anything to add?
Sorry, just hitting the mute button there. Yeah, so any textual content, and I should also add that we have the ability using Google Search Appliance to get at live database data. This is a capability called OneBox, which you've probably seen on google.com. If you type in, for example, weather in your zip code, it's kind of the classic example, but we have several others. That capability also exists.
Very cool. So lots of folks are excited about the solutions that you're sharing and wondering, can the appliance work on a disconnected network, or does it require some type of connection to the internet? I guess either for John or Elliot.
Yeah, this is Elliot. I can take that one. Yeah, the appliance operates completely independently of public internet connection. There's no connection to google.com or any of our data centers. It's a completely standalone device that uses our algorithms but can be installed behind your firewall on a closed, aka air-gapped network.
Cool.
I'll add a comment too that just to chime in, Marguerite, the solution that you just saw today has also been deployed on Thermopylae's piece to 100% closed network solutions. I mentioned, you know, all 3 levels of government kind of accreditation up to the highest level classification, and can also be deployed in conjunction with the Google Earth Enterprise 2D and maps and 3D Earth capabilities to run 100% solutions. So while today we leverage the Google Public Maps with Street View and the Public Maps tiles coming from google.com, literally it's a configuration setting to say, grab the data from NGA's Google Maps or Google Globe and have my own search appliance and deploy the solution. So we really focus strongly on being able to support our government customers and our private sector customers on their closed networks, but also where it makes sense, leverage the cloud, leverage public internet connectivity to even further enhance the experience. So on both parts can do that.
Great. So does this work with Google Maps engine in the cloud? For, I guess, maybe Elliot?
Absolutely. So I'll talk to the geospatial side. All the geospatial content, the lines, the polys, the points, the metadata about the data. You know, we saw contamination, pH levels, all those kind of attributes absolutely can be integrated with Google Maps engine as a repository for storing that data. And then the connection becomes to your Google Search Appliance on-prem, maybe to more of the type of content that you haven't either yet moved to cloud hosting, a solution like Google Drive, or for whatever privacy or policy reasons it couldn't be moved. And that's where Google Search Appliance can kind of marry the two. We call this a hybrid model, where the data that can live in the cloud is in the cloud and leveraging Google's high-end visualization for data at scale geospatially, but tied still to your important on-premise document content and in a secure way, so none of that content actually is leaving your enterprise it's all staying in your document repositories and being indexed by search.
So the next one for both of you, how do you tag the documents with their geographic locators?
So let me talk about what we actually did, and I'll let Elliot take the last half of that, because as he mentioned, there are geocoding and entity extraction approaches that can be applied with Google Search Appliance. However, what we did here today was something I think a little more novel. While we've worked extensively with geocoding, hey, if the asset ID 123 or Great Plains Pipeline is in the document, go geocode that and then associate that lat long in the document. Through our work predominantly with the intelligence community, we found that what do you do when a document is a list of all your customers? What do you do when a document mentions 27 different places, some that are on the opposite side of the globe? And after dealing with that challenge for a year or two and having varying levels of success with geocoding that content and relating it, we said, one of the things we're missing is we're missing the opportunity to take our GIS content that we already have that has much of this great, hey, that asset ID is at this location, and then find documents that relate to that thing in time and space, right? That physical asset or that report where we're using that criteria in the report to find our document content. So we've often seen customers want to go the opposite way, trying to geocode all the things in text, but what about just relating our existing geospatial content that we care about to all the documents? And that's always been an even harder problem to solve. So in this use case today, we went, the second approach. We took asset ID, which is text, and use it to search documents so we could find documents that contain information about that pipeline, about that asset. Elliot, did you want to take any of the geocoding in combination with Google Search or Gazetteer lookups?
Yeah, so we also have the capability in the search appliance to do two things. One is to pick up existing metadata and identify it, according to its classification, which of course could include geo-elements. And the other is an entity extraction or entity recognition capability by which we can look for things like addresses or cities and states or points of interest. And then those can be added as metadata to the content and visualized.
Wonderful. Such feature-rich capabilities here for folks, and they're just excited and getting lots of questions in here. So we've got a question again for both of you. Is it possible to link the search functions to confidential data on a case-by-case basis?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we do that routinely. So I think when we say confidential data, there are sort of two broad categories. There's confidential data that is specifically permissioned on a system. So in other words, the system has multiple levels of user access and only some users can see some content. And we, with search appliance, are completely compatible with that. And then, of course, the other question is confidential data where all users can see all data on the system, but only some users have access to that system. And we're also compatible with that model.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, good point, Elliot. The approach we've also wanted to take on the visualization side is the same. That depending on a user's right or role, the data that's available to them, the data that's returned in their search, could vary. But as Elliot pointed out, in the alternative scenario where all the content's searchable, but only some can access that system, is also supported.
Well, we've got some other folks concerned about, exporting data and those kinds of things. Can the data from the Google Map be exported to this shape files for use in something like ArcMap?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's a great follow-up question to rights and roles, right? So any feature within the system that we demonstrated today can be associated to a right or role. So while we predominantly focused on search, some of you may notice there was things like ingesting content and authoring data inside the user interface that we really didn't touch on that are just inherent features of the capability. But all of those are configurable at a right or role level. So if a user is part of a certain group, they could perhaps author and ingest new content in the system, while as other users are, maybe be predominantly just search the data that already exists. Exporting data is also a feature that's configurable at a write or roll level. So you could say, I want to be very careful about what data can be willy-nilly exported out. You have to be this type of user to have that right in order to have that ability. To the specific format, yes, the data contained within the system is exportable in a number of different industry standard formats to include KML, shapefile, CSV, GeoJSON, and there are about 30 others that we can support, which are just enabled kind of at a customer request basis when the solution's deployed. Instead of giving the user 500 things that they could export, we tend to give them, the ones that they care about. There's about a total of 60, I believe, total that we support.
Right. So we are talking about many government types of organizations here today. So how safe is their data being stored?
Well, to answer that question, this demo, as we initially briefed, was presented in a way where both the application, the software you saw me run, as well as the data that was searched on, as well as the documents that were searched on, was all 100% behind the firewall. So if those of you from the any DoD background have an understanding of what NIPR is, or the unclassified government network that's still controlled and secured and firewalled, where you can access the internet but no one can access you, that was the example here. So the answer to that question is really as secure as your network that you're running the solution on, because the solution is on your network. Now, that being said, both these technologies, the Google Search Appliance as well as the iSpatial product that Thermopylae develops and has integrated to perform these features you saw today, have both been through CNA, information assurance, et cetera, on multiple networks for both federal agencies and DoD networks numerous times, and have accreditation packages to go along with them. So when it's on your network, as a security network is, however, the solutions have already passed INA and CNA accreditation and information assurance scrutiny.
Great. Well, we just want to thank everyone for being here today. We just remind folks that we will have an archived copy of the recording so you can watch it over and over and over again. So just look for an email coming to you in the next day or so with that information. We also appreciate you completing the brief survey on the way out, and that'll just pop up easy for you to answer. And we hope that you'll join us again tomorrow. We've got another webinar happening. Thank you again to Google for sponsoring today's webinar, and Thermopylae for sharing the great demonstration and your cool tools. We hope everybody has a great day, and be sure and tell a friend about Directions Magazine.